determining who the superpowers of the 21st century will be. They won't be, if AIDS has anything to do with it, the United States, Western Europe, the Soviet Union, Central Africa, or Latin America. They could well be Communist China, who, because of their population problem, strictly regulate the sexual behavior of their people, or it could be the Islamic nations of the Middle East, who, because of their religion, have a strict moral code.
Let's go on. Let's go back now to the political question. Politically protected disease. This is what you're saying. This is a politically protected disease, that it's getting special treatment, that in effect we're not really treating the problem as seriously and as directly as we should be to take charge of it and control it, because it's a political football.
Right.
Can you give any examples of political pressure from the homosexual movement?
I mentioned earlier testing. Last year, the CDC in February held a meeting to discuss different testing proposals. This meeting had all sorts of people, public health authorities, gay organizations, you name it. They were there in Atlanta for this meeting. Homosexual organizations were vigorous in their opposition to any type of a mandatory testing program, anything but voluntary anonymous testing, which is basically worthless as a public health measure to control this disease. After the meeting, Urvashi Vaid of the National Gay and Lesbian Task Force said, "We came here to propose alternate solutions." I'm kind of paraphrasing. And she says, "We succeeded." And they did. On August 14th of last year, 1987, the CDC published their testing guidelines. They said nothing about mandatory testing. They did urge broadening the scope of voluntary anonymous testing, and said that women of childbearing age or intravenous drug abusers or women planning to have children should be tested. But they didn't say anything about testing homosexual men, the group at highest risk for the disease. And in fact, in the entire article outlining their recommendations for testing, the word homosexual was used only once. And that's a tribute to the clout of the gay political machine in this country.
Well, I have twice attended, in some years back, the state convention of the California Democratic Party. And it was didn't go unnoticed to me that there are various caucuses or organized groups actively participating in the party, and one of those was openly the quote-unquote gay and lesbian caucus. And it was at both of the conventions I attended. This was before AIDS was even an issue. The Democratic Party chairman has certainly very openly embraced the homosexual community for political purposes. And I don't know, they may be trying to make a little distance between them given the current AIDS situation. I don't think
I don't think they have. AIDS has not. You might think AIDS would have cut into the political strength of the homosexual movement, but it hasn't. It's strengthened it. Around the country, it has strengthened the involvement of homosexuals who would not otherwise be involved in politics. They've gotten involved, and it's strengthened, as a general rule, across the board, the political clout of the homosexual movement.
What are the homosexuals trying to achieve politically? We know we've talked about AIDS and no testing and this, but just very briefly, we don't have a lot of time left, but briefly, what are they trying to achieve politically? Well, because I want to go on and talk about something that's coming up in California that you're involved in.
Yes. Last October, they held a March on Washington for gay and lesbian rights. They distributed this document, their March demands, in which they outlined their demands and provided explanations of what those demands meant. They also distributed this document. I'll just read in the bold face their 7 demands. Their first is legal recognition of lesbian and gay relationships. Second, the repeal of all...
In other words, gay marriages.
Yes, correct. And that would include adoption opportunities, parenting, etc., etc. The repeal of all laws making sodomy between consenting adults a crime. A presidential order banning anti-gay discrimination by the federal government. That's to send a message to the country, is what they say. Passage of the Congressional Lesbian and Gay Rights Bill. Now, this bill would extend special civil rights protections to homosexuals as homosexuals. Right now, every homosexual man and woman has the same constitutional rights that you and I have under our Constitution. This is giving them special rights as homosexuals, and I don't think we should do that. The fifth one is an end to discrimination against people with AIDS, ARC, HIV positive status, or those perceived to have AIDS. Massive increases in funding for AIDS education, research, and patient care. And they say, this is one of their new slogans, money for AIDS, not for war. The last two, real briefly, which are kind of odd why these are in here. The sixth one, reproductive freedom, the right to control our own bodies, and an end to sexist oppression. And 7, an end to racism in this country and apartheid in South Africa. Now you might wonder how abortion on demand and racism or apartheid in South Africa relate to the homosexual rights movement. But what it means is they are making common cause with the radical left in this nation.
Well, it's a coalition. It's a coalition operation.
That's right.
What should we do? Paul Gahn has an initiative coming up in the California ballot.
Yes.
What should be done? What is that initiative about? We only have about 2 minutes left,
okay.
So it'll have to be fairly brief.
Real brief, this is an initiative that's sponsored by Paul Gahn and an organization that's called the California Physicians for a Logical AIDS Response. It takes the prudent public health approach to this disease that we need to take. It makes testing permitted under certain conditions. It makes infection with this virus that I mentioned earlier mandated. It implements contact tracing, which is something else, a standard public health measure for syphilis and gonorrhea. It does a wide range of things that are the right things that we need to begin to do to control this disease. This is probably the best thing that in the state of California can be done right now to help control this epidemic.
Is to get petitions.
Is to get this petition. You can write to Paul Gahn and get a copy of a petition like this.
Do you have an address? We may put the address up at the end of the program. So.
Yeah, and this has to be done on a county basis. There has to be a circular. It's just like the other initiative drives that have been done over the years. And this is a very prudent thing. As I understand, the deadline is sometime in May to get this. They need 500,000 signatures to qualify it for the ballot.
And it would come up probably in November at that point.
That's correct.
Right.
Okay. And I wholly support this, and I encourage people to get copies of this and to begin distributing it.
You have about 30 seconds to summarize any last thoughts that you have.
Okay. Well, I think the important thing that we need to remember about AIDS is that we should treat it like we do other sexually transmitted diseases, syphilis and gonorrhea. We should not treat AIDS as a special disease just because of the politics of it. We need to treat it like we do sexually transmitted diseases in this country. And that's the only way we're going to control it. The longer we play politics with this epidemic, the more people are going to die. Millions may die of AIDS. Millions more don't need to die if we take prudent public health measures to prevent this disease.
Kirk, thanks very much for coming on the program today. I'm Bob Reeder. You've been watching the Bob Reeder Show. We hope you tune in to another one of our programs. And thanks again, Kirk, for coming. We appreciate it.
Thank you.